Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another hopefully rollicking episode of Mondays with Mundy, and that's me, Jim Mundy, the historian for the Union League Legacy Foundation. If you've been watching these episodes, you know that we've been traveling around the clubhouse promoting different rooms, or at least talking about them and their history and whatnot. And in the last episode, we were in the library, where I opened the episode by saying that any city club that wants to be a good city club, and after all, the League is the #1 city club, a good city club must have 2 rooms. And obviously the first was the library, because that's where we were, but the other good room has to be a bar, because without a good bar, there's no sense opening your doors in the morning, right? Because after all, that's where all the fun takes place. And so today, we're doing the Old Café in the League House. So we're in the Broad Street building on the north side of the hallway, in a space that was created for use as a bar and basic social room in 1886. Now, in the early 1880s, the economy was going strong, the League membership was growing, but they needed more space for food and beverage, a problem that always seems to be around at the League. And so the solution was to take 3 offices that ran along the north side of the hallway, one for the president, one for the secretary, and one for the board of directors, and to take 2 of those offices and use that space to create a new dining room that they would then call the cafe. So they tore down the interior wall at that point. Then they took the exterior wall, which in today's room is where the pillar is standing in the middle of the room, and they took that wall and pushed it north to match the corners of the 2 pavilions in the northeast and northwest corners of the house itself. All right? So that creates pretty much the square room that we have today. The League hired one of its own members, an architect named Theophilus Parsons Chandler, to create the room that we see today. T.P. Chandler, easier to say, and this is his work. And the core of it remains today, because after all, even though you can redecorate a room, the form still stays the same. So the room itself, the wainscoting, the woodwork, California redwood, this wonderful fireplace off to my right is the original fireplace from 1886, designed by Chandler, local brownstone, and this wonderful hazelwood as an overmantel with these 2 griffins with their wings splayed up, and the UL cipher in the center of the overmantel behind that. The coffering is original, the column obviously original, but I think the neatest thing in here that's over from 1886 is this table and this chair. The League commissioned 17 tables and matching chairs from a Philadelphia cabinet maker named John Ragatz, R-A-G-A-T-Z. His shop was at 215 Pear Street in the Frankfurt neighborhood of Philadelphia. And we still have almost all of the Ragatz tables. Unfortunately, we only have 4 of the chairs left, and even these were only given to the League in the 1990s. They were discovered in an antique store in Jenkintown by a member of the Ladies Committee who, recognizing the UL cipher on the crest of the chair, purchased all 4 chairs and then gave them to the League. And that's why we have them today. And you can see them in the Sandow Room in the Heritage Center on the ground floor of the Broad Street building. Now, besides these oblong tables, there were also round tables that would seat 4, and some would even seat 6. So some of them are still in the room, and others are in other parts of the League House today. Now, over time, let's see. What did the room look like in 1886? It is believed that the League hired Louis Comfort Tiffany and his company to decorate the room. So the walls were painted a rich maroon colored red with a bronze and gold leaf stencil pattern, heavily stenciled, and that went all around the room itself. And of course, they hung paintings over that. And the room today still has a wonderful collection of paintings in it. Some of the best in the collection, some of the most, how should we say, frivolous perhaps in the collection as well, but paintings that have wonderful stories to them at the same time. So come down and take a look at those as well. The room was then was illuminated by 4 gasoliers that had 6 arms or branches to them, but only 2 small double-hung sash windows. And obviously they weren't going to provide enough light, so the League, when plate glass was developed in England, and plate glass had the advantage of being rolled in larger sizes than just 3 by 4 feet, which is what American manufacturers were limited to. English plate glass was purchased 96 inches tall, 66 inches wide, and it's still in the windows today after 100 plus years. So you can see those when you come into the house itself. Uh, in the late 1880s, the league also added 2 skylights to the ceiling to help illuminate the room. They were 4 by 8 feet in dimensions, and unfortunately they are no longer here, but they do appear in an insurance survey from 1890, which was why we know exactly where they were at that point in time. So speaking of time, time moves on, styles change, tastes change, and so the room changed. It was redecorated in 1920. They pretty much kept everything intact, the only addition being new electrolyres, right after electricity was now illuminating the building and not gas anymore. But they changed the paint color on the walls, but kept the same stencil pattern. Paintings are still here, tables were still here. They still had the original 1886 Agra, India rugs. There were 2 large area rugs made in Agra, India, where the Taj Mahal is located. They were still here. And then in 1961, the league's consulting architect named Vincent Kling was asked to redecorate the room itself. And it was a pretty drastic redecoration. Luckily, though, very little of it actually took place. For instance, the Kling firm suggested that the fireplace be demolished and taken out entirely. Luckily, it's still here. All right. The wainscoting is still here. The coffering is still here. Light fixtures changed. The rugs were no longer in the room. Instead, a wall-to-wall red wool carpet was installed. They put drywall over the 1920 color scheme, and then they applied a red flocked wallpaper to it to give it that Victorian look, I suppose. A drastic redecoration that was appropriate for the 1960s, shall we say. All right. So in the 1990s, the room was returned to something of its Victorian appearance in terms of its color and stenciling, and that was appropriate. But then in 2005 and 2006, the House Committee ordered the redecoration of the entire first floor of the Broad Street building. And that's the decorating scheme that we see today in this room. The walls have changed. No longer do we have red flocked wallpaper or just paint. We have these multicolored panels of dyed leather that are separated by wooden furring strips that were salvaged from the smoking room when that was altered as well. The chandeliers in here, the electrolyres, if you will, they were added at that point in time. Gives us a little bit of a Western feel, perhaps. The frieze that we see around the top of the wall was added at that point in time, and especially in the south wall. You'll notice that we have lobsters and steers running around, or not running, but certainly placed around the wall itself. And in 1886, on the south wall itself, there was a frieze that ran from corner to corner, but just on that one wall. And on the far left-hand side, it showed the Pilgrims arriving at Plymouth Rock. And then on the far right-hand side, it showed the pioneers moving westward in the country's expansion, and they had their Conestoga wagons being pulled by steers. So that explains the steers. But you can also see lobsters. The room off to my left, through the open doorway, was the ladies' dining room from 1870 to 1910. And in the 1880s, it was decorated by a league member named George Herzog, who was a decorative artist in Philadelphia. And one of his decorative motifs was these bright red lobsters on the wall that rotated around the entire wall itself. And so when the decorator was looking for inspiration for this room in 2005, 2006, she took the lobsters and the steers and created this frieze that we have today. Now, the members jokingly refer to it as the surf and turf frieze, but I think it's a pretty good description of it at this point in time. So, but the most important addition in the 2006 redecorating was the bar itself, right? Because in the 19th century, gentlemen didn't drink at a bar. They didn't stand at a bar. If they had a drink, they had it at a table, and they probably had it in their home or at their club, right? So there was not a real functioning bar in here until 2006, and that's the bar that we have in here today. It replaces an original 1865 wall that separated one of the 2 offices on the floor at that point in time. But I've got to admit, it has turned this room into what has to be the best bar in Center City, Philadelphia. After all, the alcohol selection in here, whether it's brewed, fermented, or distilled, is absolutely remarkable, top quality, fun to drink, and enjoyable. as is the company that one keeps in this room with fellow members and guests and things like that. So, as we open, if you're going to have a good city club, especially a #1 city club, you have to have a good bar, and that's what we have today. So I hope you've enjoyed this little episode about the Old Café, and we'll find something new to do the next time. So in the meantime, stay safe, stay warm, since winter is coming. Fall is certainly here, and we hope to see you again in just a few weeks. Thank you for joining us. Take care and stay well. Goodbye.